How Sony got destroyed by the Helldivers 2 community.
Today we're going to talk about one of the most straightforward and clear-cut examples ever of a video game publisher, that being Sony in this particular instance, having their reputation completely torched and reversing a decision that never should have been made in the first place. It's actually a really cool story. Hundreds of thousands of people coordinating their efforts, then reversing those efforts after they accomplished a very specific goal, which
Helldivers 2 community, there is a lot to be envious of them for most communities because they are absolutely awesome.
also is, funnily enough, the entire premise behind Helldivers 2 to begin with. It's almost like a mission from the video game spilled over into real life, causing a massive and very coordinated community of players to start review bombing their own game in an effort to fight back against their corporate overlords. It's honestly fascinating, and even though people have been asking me to
Well, Sony are known bug sympathizers and bot propagandists, so it makes sense to a certain degree.
talk about this ever since it first got started, now I can talk about the entire thing fully, start to finish. It all began, funnily enough, when the game first came out. Hidden away on the Steam page was a little yellow banner that said, quote, requires third-party account PlayStation Network, end quote. And this requirement was also reflected in-game. When players booted up for the very first time, they would be faced with a screen telling them that they needed a PlayStation Network account in order to play the title. But there was also a skip button down underneath it. Anyone
The most beautiful button in the world, boys.
who wanted to, on PC at least, could simply ignore the fact that a PlayStation account was allegedly required for Helldivers 2, and further magnifying the confusion surrounding all of this, on Sony's own PlayStation website, the section containing frequently asked questions, or FAQ, up until May 3rd of 2024, said, quote, signing in to PSN is optional when playing a PlayStation game on PC, end quote. That is, in no uncertain terms here,
Was optionable, though. But now is optionable again because of a victory. Nice.
contradictory language, and we learned at one point from the CEO of Arrowhead Game Studios that this requirement was only disabled shortly after launch because of server issues, which means that this mandatory third-party account policy had always been there, hovering in the background or off in the wings, but no one actually knew that. You could argue that they should have known, maybe, but again, the official PlayStation website clearly stated that signing into a PlayStation Network account was optional for the PC player base. Recapping quickly here, Helldivers 2
Exactly. We know that this is 100% true without exceptions. There's no debate. Man, by the way, you know what's the funniest part about this situation? Not how Sony got crushed, but how there are people who are shilling hard for PlayStation and actually unironically saying, oh, you bunch of losers, just make a PSN account. It's not that hard. It's not that long. Blah, 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 blah. I'm eating the bugs now. I'm living in a 5-minute city. They cut my dick off. Yay! I don't want to be a loser like that. No one wants to be a loser like that. But there are unironically people who are that much lost in the forest of life. And it is sad. It is really sad.
2, since the very beginning, had a nebulous and ill-defined requirement that all players have an account on PlayStation Network. This was listed in a couple of different places, it was contradicted elsewhere, and it was immediately disabled when the game first launched, because of server load, allegedly. However, now, 3 months after its initial release, and after the community had exploded into the millions, that requirement was reinstated at the behest of Sony. On May
Dude, they're still going strong. That is amazing. Helldivers retention is absolutely insane.
2nd, 2024, originally published on Steam, a message went out reading as follows, quote, due to a technical issue at the launch of Helldivers 2, we allowed the linking requirements for Steam accounts to a PlayStation Network account to be temporarily optional. That grace period will now expire. See
That sounds like a blatant lie, but go on.
details below in this post. Further down, as such, as of May 6th, all new Helldivers 2 players on Steam will be required to connect their Steam account to a PlayStation Network account. Current players on Steam will start to see the mandatory login from May 30th.
And what do we say to that, boys? What do we say to that? Go F yourself. No. No. Principle.
Will be required to have a linked Steam and PlayStation Network account by June 4th. PlayStation Network accounts are free and easy to set up using this link, end quote. Pretty straightforward, right? No, it's not. See, something a lot of people likely weren't even aware of before all this is that PlayStation Network services, PSN services, are not globally accessible. Following this change, even as some,
How the hell is my country one of the only 4 ones that don't have PSN in the how does it make sense?
shall we say,
Well, then again, I don't really care, but you get the point.
misguided community members argued that none of this was worth being upset over in the slightest. The game was delisted on Steam from over 170 different countries. Even further, since Steam is accessible in these countries, while PlayStation Network services are not, this would mean that anyone who purchased the game across those regions would straight up lose access to the product that they had bought in their library as soon as the changes came into effect, which is very obviously going to cause a lot of friction. Good guy Steam over here, recognizing the untenable nature of that situation, obviously, began issuing refunds to players that wanted one, even if they had already crossed the typical 2-hour game time threshold, which is required to be under if you want a refund, which solidified the idea that Sony was the bad guy, Steam was just trying to help, and developers themselves were just caught in the middle. Obviously, the backlash over all this was very...
Steam being amazing as always. Say what you will. Gabe is a god, and I kiss his feet on a regular basis. I have made my choice. You know, take 5 minutes city. No, Gabe's feet. Humana.
very quick to begin. But then, between May 3rd and May 4th, Sony actually went and changed the language of their PlayStation website to read, quote, some PlayStation games may require you sign in and link to an account for PSN, end quote. Whereas the previous version said...
Yeah, I mean, you know what's the funniest part about the Wayback Machine? It's a complete crazy lefty thing that they delete things that they don't like, but thankfully this was not one of their things. Most famously owned by Taylor Lorenz's family, uncle or something like that. So the Wayback Machine is actually pretty much just propaganda.
Said signing in to PSN is optional. That's shady. It reminds me of the Tarkov situation, which just recently happened, where Battlestate Games went and changed the language on their website to try and obfuscate the fact that they had basically lied to everyone.
Yeah, this was so hilarious. That Sony is taking a book, is taking a play from the Escape from Tarkov's book. And one of my friends, by the way, you know what he just told me? Now, it's not currently a big deal, but this actually could become a big deal in Tarkov again. So there is this game called Infinity Escape or whatever. And it's an escape from Escape from Tarkov, and the other one is Arena Breakout Infinity. There we go. And it has 40k viewers, while Tarkov has 4k viewers on Steam. And the Tarkov CEO was completely molding about that. So man, it's always great to take a play from the Escape from Tarkov book, because that's gonna lead to good results.
So people aren't really having that in gaming right now, and people immediately saw it, obviously. But things were only just getting started, because a massive community of very dedicated and very well coordinated video game players were now faced with a new enemy. This is the part where chaos ensued. First, a few players here and there began a process that's called review bombing, where you change your review of a product to negative or leave a brand new negative review if you can, which indicates dissatisfaction for one reason or another. In this case, dissatisfaction at the prospect of losing the product they had purchased because Sony wants to implement unnecessary requirements that they can't even adhere to, the players, that is. But that opening salvo of negative reviews sparked a set of very interesting responses. One of the Helldivers 2 community managers, named Spitz in this case, posted, quote, I want people to make their displeasure known in a place where it might actually make a difference. Steam.
This was also coincidentally one of the managers or whoever's of Helldivers who was like, just make the account, do that. And then the developers are not without blame at the end of the day. A victory was had, but don't you ever make the mistake or forget that developers made the bed that they sleep in. They knew that this was a possibility. They were told probably months in advance that this is gonna happen. They knew all of this, and they tried to, just let it slide if no one's unhappy.
Steam reviews and refund requests will do that. Angry posting in the Discord won't. I'm not happy about this decision either, end quote. The CEO of Arrowhead, whom was quite active through all of this on social media, said, Ouch, right in the review score. Well, I guess it's warranted. And then another Arrowhead employee named Misty, in this case, said that the change was, quote, to allow us to ban people. That is the sole reason, end quote. All of these statements and more were amplified very, very quickly. And the result was that the Helldivers 2 community, who has been extensively trained in the process of coordinating hundreds of thousands of players into shared action against a common enemy, came together with Sony as their enemy and Steam reviews as their weapon. Over the span of roughly 3 days, over 200,000 negative reviews flooded into the Steam store page, changing the overall status from mostly positive to mixed to negative.
Now this is a cape design.
On a game that had been one of the most widely celebrated video game success stories in recent memory. Obviously, the game would still exist after all of this. Obviously, there would still be some players to populate it. But over the span of just a few days, it became clear that Sony was crippling one of their flagship products with this decision, all for a change that was completely unnecessary. And that type of revelation has only one outcome: submission. On May 6th, updating the very same post that had initially sparked the entire situation to begin with, Sony relented, saying, quote, Helldivers fans, we've heard your feedback on the Helldivers 2 account linking update. The May 6th update, which would have required Steam and PlayStation Network account linking for new players and for current players beginning May 30th, will not be moving forward. We're still learning what is best for PC players, and your feedback has been invaluable. Thanks
Corporate shell posting, classic BS-ity.
again for your continued support of Helldivers 2, and we'll keep you updated on future plans, end quote. To put it bluntly here, that's just total victory. Yes, there were still a few more items that needed some attention, such as the game now being delisted for sale.
Oh, look at that. I can see Sweeney Sydney's tits. Nice. Well, he didn't even pronounce that correctly, but hey, I am focused.
Certain countries, because the upcoming change had caused a response from Steam, but assuming rectification for those problems, which are very likely, the Helldivers 2 community had achieved total victory and effectively forced Sony to back off from a change that they had always wanted to implement, but had no actual justification for doing so. Even better, and once again speaking to the strength of community here, after Sony had backed down, the mission changed. Instead of continuing to bombard the Steam store with negative reviews, players came together with a new goal: flip the reviews back to where they should be, positive, which resulted in nearly 100,000 good reviews flooding in, once again bringing the overall score to mostly positive in one of the most well-executed...
That is good. My favorite part is that this doesn't go away, so you know that something happened there.
...and effective review manipulation campaigns we've ever seen in the entire industry. On top of this, demonstrating why this particular community has that level of coordination and zeal to begin with, Arrowhead seemed to indicate that there would be a dedicated cosmetic, in this case a cape, to commemorate the entire situation given out free to their players, once again showcasing that when companies prioritize community satisfaction instead of brain-dead corporate garbage policies like Sony, they reap enormous benefit with very little downside. Helldivers 2, in particular the PC community for the game, has become a perfect demonstration of what organized backlash can achieve. Sony was quite literally about to enact a policy that would have restricted the game from being even accessible to anyone who purchased it in over 170 different countries around the globe. That's insane. But rather than simply whining about it on social media and doing nothing, the players of that game came together, bombarded Sony into submission, forced them to change their policy, and now the game is better off. The community is better off. The developers are better off. Literally everyone is better off because organized action shut down the asinine decision-making of a brain-dead publisher. I try to avoid being hyperbolic on things.
I mean, Sony's not brain-dead, to be fair. They literally just could not care less about you. Again, Sony's pastime activity is making tanks and then trying them out on hospitals. They really don't care a lot about you.
Things like this, but mainstream AAA publishing companies in video games are a worthless and oftentimes detrimental force on all of gaming that needs to be put in their place. Highest praise possible here to anyone who helped put Sony in theirs. They absolutely deserved it, every bit of it. And the end result is better for everyone. Players get a cosmetic, I get to make content, and a whole bunch of people don't lose access to a game that they legitimately paid for. Win, 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 win.
And the best part, technically, is the fact that the game's still great. The game's still amazing. Everything's working, everything's fine, everything is cool. I think that's kind of also super important. Man, never surrender to eat the bugs. Upper echelon.